The Hebrew Feast of First Fruits, when Jesus the head was resurrected as the first fruit offering of barley before the possible rapture resurrection of his small remnant of real Christian body of Christ, bride barley harvest on the same day this year 2026 on May 2nd sundown to May 3rd sundown is a rapture high watch date. Then, it would mean the head and its body would have the same resurrection rapture date on the Feast of First Fruits, which means the small remnant of church saints bride of Christ are the first fruit barley harvest offering along with Jesus who is their head. When the barley harvest is not, Aviv, ripe by the spring equinox day for the barley bread, Omer, offering on Passover Pesach, the Passover Pesach Groom's arrival is delayed by a month to the next full moon to May 1st to 7th 2026. In which case, the wheat harvest of the millions of cowardly traitor lukewarm Christian tribulation saints left behind at the rapture would begin on the wheat harvest Pentecost Shovat on June 21st, which also happens to be the summer solstice day exactly 50 days later, when the church was birthed on Pentecost approximately 2,000 years ago. The numbers would fit perfectly. Wheat requires harsher threshing to harvest, so the lukewarm Christian tribulation saints will go through the tribulation age judgment to be purified of their sins by severe wheat threshing or thrashing persecutions by the Antichrist.
If so, there would be a key difference between the rapture harvest of the church saints bride of Christ barley harvest body of Christ first fruits of the head who is Christ, who may be resurrected on the Passover's feast of first fruits barley harvest, compared to the martyred harvest of the tribulation saints lukewarm Christians wheat harvest, during the Shovat feast of Pentecost. Barley required less intensive threshing than wheat because its husk is less tightly bound to the grain. Both barley and wheat were generally threshed on the same open-air floors using similar methods, but the inherent characteristics of each grain dictated the necessary effort. The real Christian bride of Christ have gone through assassination attempts every day, and loss of family and home and reputation and job and friends, and selling of all their possessions and using up of all their savings to reach the brink of starvation many times in order to defend the 6 billion humans and protect the millions of cowardly traitor fake Christians through the decades, which was their sanctification and purification process of Queen Esther's bridal preparation, so that they are the 5 wise virgins with the Holy Spirit oil in their lamps.
The millions of cowardly traitor lukewarm Christian, tribulation saints, 5 foolish virgins without oil in their lamps decided to ignore our real Christians' daily sermons and warnings, and to betray us, and to run away in sheer terror of assassination attempts and fear of ridicule from all church donators. So they need to be purified by the tribulation age judgments, tortures and rapes and cannibalism and beheading martyrdom by the Antichrist and his Nephilim reptilian hybrid pedophile cannibal Satanist globalist elites. There is a difference in the harvest methods between the true Christian church saints, bride of Christ, samurai warriors of Christ, who will be raptured to heaven before the tribulation age judgment of God versus the cowardly traitor lukewarm Christian tribulation saints, who will be martyred and killed by the Antichrist during the tribulation age judgment after they are left behind on the earth at the rapture. The tribulation age horrors and persecutions is the only way that the lukewarm Christian cowardly traitor tribulation saints can have their souls saved, so that they will not be thrown into hell. It is their last chance to choose Christ over their hundreds of redefined Bible verses, hundreds of fake foreign gods, which their millions of Satan Lucifer's fake unbiblical job position pastors used in order to recruit millions of fake Christian church donators.
Joshua had said that there will be no FIFA World Cup soccer match on June 11 to July 19, 2026. We do not leave behind any of our brothers, so the bride of Christ true church saints will be prepared by God as his bride through decades of sanctification and purification, bridal preparation, persecution, chastening, and they are his lost sheep, so they will hear Jesus' voice and come to him. As far as the guests at the wedding feast, lukewarm Christian apostate tribulation saints, they will choose to not listen to us real Christians and Jesus' warnings, and they will be left behind at the rapture, so that their souls can be saved by their purification through the torture and rape and cannibalism and martyrdom beheading by the Antichrist. They will not be able to remain lukewarm, cowardly, traitor, neutral Christians anymore, because God is not allowing it anymore, and they will either have to choose to be killed for Jesus in the tribulation age judgment, or to take the Antichrist's COVID mark of the beast, nanite gene-altering chimera zombie luciferase tattoo digital ID digital currency microneedle patch vaccine to lose their human souls.
Hi, Steve here at blessedhopeforever.com. Coming up on New Year's Day. This may be published on New Year's Eve. Remember all of this? Well, it all meant something. The 777 pattern that landed exactly 7 days before the winter solstice. May 14, 1948, Israel becomes a nation again. To December 21, 2025, winter solstice, modern Israel, 77 years, 7 months, 7 days old. And the Hanukkah connection. December 14, 2025, being the start of Hanukkah. Hanukkah begins. Israel is 77 years, 7 months old. The 8th day of Hanukkah, December 21, coinciding with the solstice, the Festival of Lights, which reached its climax the 8th day. On the exact day, Israel turned 77 years, 7 months, 7 days old, which was the darkest day of the year, and the winter begins. And as I told you, I would look ahead. I did. I have spent considerable time on this. I think you may find it interesting. December 21, 2025 forward, 144 days, the number of the elect, times 1,000, to May 14, 2026. Okay, Israel turns 78. And then the next solstice, summer solstice, June 21, 2026, 182 days, exactly 0.5 years after the 777. The winter period is framed perfectly by the solstices. It begins on the 77 day winter solstice and ends at the summer solstice. We have updated our timeline, and what we have noticed here with extraordinary precision is a May 14 quadruple convergence. Quadruple. I want to share that with you. History's not random, it's a divine architecture. I intend to show you folks that by synchronizing the solar calendar, the Hebrew feast cycle, and the prophetic day count that we're given in Scripture, a startling pattern emerges. The entire history of the church age and the restoration of Israel is bookended by a single calendar date, May 14, creating a precise 2,000-year symmetry between the ascension of Christ and his second coming. This timeline is anchored by 4 events falling on the exact same solar date, creating a perfect frame for the church age. Okay? Our Lord ascended May 14, AD 33. Our Lord departs to prepare a place, and the countdown for the church age begins. Now jump forward in time to one of the most prophetic signs, the sign May 14, 1948, the event being the rebirth of Israel, the fig tree buds, and after 1,900 years of silence, the prophetic clock for the final generation starts. Now jump forward to May 14, 2026, the Feast of the Ascension, and Israel's 78th birthday. So here are the specific details. In 2026, Western Easter falls on April 5. The Ascension is traditionally celebrated on the 40th day of Easter, counting Easter Sunday as day 1. So April 5 plus 39 days is May 14, 2026. Are you getting this? Okay. Ascension, Israel reborn, Feast of Ascension in 2026, all on May 14. The Feast of the Ascension falls on the exact anniversary of the nation's birth. It serves, I believe, as the high watch warning that the gap is closing. Now, summer solstice plus 20 days tribulation brings you to, guess what? The return, May 14, 2033, the second coming of Christ. Now we have a quadruple convergence of May 14. Now let's go back to the May 14 Ascension where we started. Exactly 2,000 solar years after he left, the King returns. So we've got the Ascension, Israel reborn, the Feast of Ascension, Israel's birthday, next year, 2026, the second coming of Christ, all on a May 14. Now this is if the rapture occurred on summer solstice, which would be our ascension, our departure. Now the return, this date, lands on second Passover. That is the biblical feast of second chances for those who were far off on a journey during the first Passover. We know that from Numbers chapter 9, verse 10. I believe the solstice triggers this. While May 14 serves as the warning signal, the actual mechanics of the tribulation require a precise 20-day count, Daniel's 70th week, 1260. And this necessitates a 37-day tarrying period after the signal. So I'm going to suggest the rapture date of June 20, 2026, the summer solstice, the longest day of light before the darkness of tribulation sets in. Song of Solomon 2:11, for lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. We also have a biblical marker. Summer solstice is 6 Tammuz on the Hebrew calendar. 6 Tammuz. Well, 5 Tammuz, the exact anniversary of Ezekiel's vision in Ezekiel 1:1. The heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. The exact calculations of time difference between summer solstice and Ezekiel's vision, I did the calculations. It's 15.5 hours Jerusalem time, 8 hours New York City time. That's pretty close. Now, when did the summer solstice last fall exactly on 5 Tammuz? And when will it happen again? That was another question I had. Well, the last time the summer solstice fell exactly on 5 Tammuz was June 21, 2007. And the next time that it'll happen is June 21, 2053. That's 19 years ago from 2026 and 27 years ahead again from 2026. Now, from June 20, 2026 to May 14, 2033 is exactly 20 days. That's 2 halves of 1260 days. And then we have the Caleb generation, Psalm 90. The timeline solves the riddle, I believe, of the generation that shall not pass away, Psalm 90, verse 10, by aligning with the life of Caleb. Psalm 90 defines the generation as 70 to 80 years by reason of strength. On May 14 of 2026, modern Israel turns 78, entering the final strength window just before the 80-year limit. The type being Caleb entering the promised land at age 78. 40 years spying, 38 years wandering. So just as Caleb conquered the land at 78, Israel enters the tribulation period at 78 to face its final trial before the kingdom. Are you getting excited yet? Now here's something else. The transition from the church age to the kingdom era is marked by the prophet Samuel. The Jewish fast of Samuel, which you'll see on the Hebrew calendar, marking the death of the prophet who anointed the first kings. This begins at sunset on May 14, 2026. So as the sun sets on the church's Feast of Ascension, the memorial for the kingmaker begins, signaling that the time has come to anoint the true king for his return. The probability of the Ascension, AD 33, the rebirth of Israel, modern, the state of Israel, 1948, the Ascension Feast, 2026, and the second Passover return in 2033, all converging on May 14, dearly beloved, is statistically impossible. It suggests that this is not a coincidence, but a design. For lo, the winter is past. The fig tree putteth forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grape give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verses 11 and 13. Now, additionally, there are exactly 144 days from December 21, 2025, the date on our arc timeline, to May 14, 2026. 144. Now, that's a key number. Okay, in Revelation, the 144,000 witnesses in Revelation 7 and chapter 14 as well. And the wall of New Jerusalem being 144 cubits in Revelation chapter 21. December 21, 2025 was the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. What this timeline seems to be telling me is that we may be home when winter is past. Song of Solomon 2:11. And this 144-day count literally measures the distance from the start of winter, December 21, to the signal of the end, May 14. So astronomically, it takes exactly 144 days for the winter to fully pass and arrive at the signal date. There are exactly 182 days from December 21st, 2025, when we thought we might leave. 182 days, the winter solstice, to June 21, 2026, summer solstice. 182. This is strangely exactly half of a solar year. 365 divided by 2 is 182.5. And this timeline effectively tracks the journey from the darkest day, winter solstice, to the brightest day, summer solstice. December 21, the winter begins. June 21, the winter is past. Song of Solomon 2:11. It's fully realized as the summer solstice arrives. So the count from the winter solstice to this rapture solstice date is precisely half a year or 26 weeks. And this reinforces the idea that the season of darkness has completely turned over to the season of light. Now, when the kingdom begins, Jesus is back in time to fulfill Rosh Hashanah, which is a major concern on many people's part. I've often been asked, about that. Jesus is not just back in time for Rosh Hashanah. He is present on earth for 134 days prior to the feast to prepare the world for his coronation. And this creates a stunning three-stage fulfillment of the fall feast, where the king is in the field quite literally. Song of Solomon 7:11. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. That's the bride inviting the bridegroom, the king, into the field. Usually a king is in his palace, and to see him, you got to have an appointment. You got to dress formally, and you have to navigate all the bureaucracy. It sounds kind of like, a president, a U.S. president. Now, in Jewish tradition, this represents the high holy days, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, when God is the transcendent judge. The king leaves the palace, goes out to the fields to check on his subjects, and in the field, anyone can approach him, farmers in their work clothes, whatever, and he receives everyone with a smiling face. And here we have the King of Kings present on earth for 134 days prior to the feast to prepare the world for his coronation. This is how the timeline works out. So the return of the king, second Passover, May 14, 2033. The second coming, redemption. Just as the first Exodus happened on Passover, the second Exodus, gathering the exiles, would begin on second Passover. The king comes to deliver his people. The judgment is the 75 days, May 14 to July 28, 2033. That's the date that the kingdom would begin. There's this time of wrath, sheep and goats judgment, the nations are judged. This 75-day gap is not something new to us. We've known this on every timeline. The difference between 1260 and 1335 is likely the period where the enemies are removed and the sanctuary is cleansed and the king enforces his rule. 58 days, July 28 to September 24, 2033, Feast of Trumpets. I believe that's almost to the day, 16 years from the Revelation 12 sign. So the kingdom begins day 1335. That's the coronation. The king is in the field. This 58-day period covers the Hebrew month of Elul. Now, in Jewish tradition, Elul is known as the month where the king is in the field, meaning he has left the palace to be accessible to the people before the high holy days. And in 2033, the Hebrew month of Elul corresponds to August 26 through September 23. In 2033, the Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, falls on September 24. Okay? I hope you got that. Now, in this timeline, Jesus is physically on the earth, in the field, during the month of Elul, inspecting the fruit of the nations before he takes the throne. Dearly beloved, the math, which never lies, is stating that Rosh Hashanah, September 24, 2033, Feast of Trumpets, Tishri 1, the shofar would be blown to crown the king, and the millennial kingdom is officially inaugurated. This is a timeline where Jesus returns on the day Israel was reborn, okay? As well as the day he ascended. Okay? This quadruple convergence I was not expecting to see this. All it took for me to see this was to just honestly move ahead and do the math. That's all. Okay? And this is how it comes out. Nothing was forced here. Okay? I let it all speak for itself. In spring, he came as the lamb, Passover. Summer, he harvests the earth, end of the age. The fall, he reigns as the king, the lion. Tabernacles, New Year. This is followed by a Sabbath, total lunar eclipse on October 7, which in October 7, by the way, which is 10 years exact from Hamas attacking Israel in 2023. We have a total lunar eclipse that occurs exactly 10 years after the October 7 war began, landing precisely on a Sabbath and a biblical feast. Astronomically, we see a Tabernacles blood moon. There is a total lunar eclipse on October 8, 2033. While the eclipse peaks on October 8, UTC time, in the Western Hemisphere, it spans the night of October 7 and 8. Okay? October 8, 2033 is a Saturday. Shabbat. October 8 corresponds exactly to 15 Tishri, the first day of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. The symmetry between the start of the war and the start of the peace is perfect. Hamas attacks Israel, October 7, 2023. The Simchat Torah War, the Sabbath, and the eclipse, the peace eclipse, October 7 and 8, 2033. Total lunar eclipse, blood moon over the kingdom, exactly 10 solar years later. Okay? This has prophetic significance. Zechariah chapter 14. The fact that this eclipse falls on tabernacles in the year 2033 is theologically massive. According to Zechariah 14:16, after the Messiah returns and establishes his kingdom, the survivors of all nations must go up to Jerusalem to worship the king, specifically during the Feast of Tabernacles. Boy, is the United Nations in for a surprise. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations shall even go up from year to year to worship the king, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. That's Zechariah 14:16. So May 14, 2033, the king returns. Second Passover, September 24, 2033, the king's crowned, Rosh Hashanah. October 8, 2033, the sign in the heavens, exactly 10 years after the war began between Hamas and Israel in 2023. The blood moon effectively marks the opening ceremony of the millennial reign. The war of October 7, 2023 began a period of trouble. Exactly 10 years later, on the peace of October 7, 2033, the moon turns to blood as the king gathers the nations to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles. Zechariah 14. Okay, so moving along, Yom Kippur, October 3, Day of Atonement. October 7, 10-year anniversary, and Tabernacles begins at sunset. October 8, the total lunar eclipse, the blood moon on the first day of Tabernacles, concluding on Shemini Atzeret, the 8th day solemn assembly. Okay, 16, 17, October 2033. After the king is crowned, Rosh Hashanah, and the nations gather, Tabernacles, eclipse, the timeline ultimately rests in a solemn assembly that foreshadows the eternal state. Now, the odds of these convergences are statistically 1 in some astronomical God only knows number. Dearly beloved, how does your logic relate to the fact, and how does your emotions relate to the fact that this timeline reveals only a short span of time remains before it becomes obsolete and a contradiction of Bible prophecy occurs? That if the sand is not almost through the hourglass, we will surpass the 2,000-year point, we will surpass the 120-year point, and we will surpass the 80-year point. This is the convergence constraint. This timeline is not arbitrary. It is mathematically fragile. It relies on specific countdowns that are currently expiring. If this specific window, 2026, 2033, passes without fulfillment, the theological framework that ties these three major biblical epochs together collapses. The sand and hourglass is running out because these three independent timelines are hitting their hard stops simultaneously. This timeline will become obsolete if not fulfilled very, 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 very soon. There's the 2,000-year limit, the Hosea constraint. After 2 days, he'll revive us. On the third day, he'll raise us up. If 1 day is with the Lord is 1,000 years, 2 Peter 3:8, then the 2 days of the church age equals 2,000 years. Okay? The crucifixion, the ascension, AD 33. AD 33 plus 2,000 is AD 2033. If we pass May 14, 2033, we have exceeded the 2,000-year count. Okay? And the symmetry of the Great Week, 4,000 years BC, 2,000 years AD, breaks. The 2,000-year symmetry only works now. This is what people ought to be talking about. The 80-year limit, the fig tree constraint. This generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled, Matthew 24:34. And the days of our years are 60 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, Psalm 90, verse 10. The generation that sees the fig tree blossom, Israel's rebirth, the rebirth of the modern state of Israel, will see the end. So the hard stop is Israel reborn, 1948 plus 80 years. The max lifespan is 2028. I'm trying to tell you folks that if the timeline pushes forward much further, the generation of 1948 is gone. The prophecy of the fig tree generation will expire. This is what people ought to be talking about. The 120-year limit, the Genesis constraint. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Genesis 6:3. And many scholars view this as a jubilee countdown for humanity. 120 jubilees, 120 times 50, 6,000 years. We also may currently be in the margin of error or grace period, often associated with calendar drift. If you haven't woke up yet, now's the time. We are already, dearly beloved, we are already on borrowed time regarding the 6,000-year calendar. Stretching this much further beyond 2033 pushes the 6,000-year concept to a breaking point where the math of the jubilees no longer aligns with the seventh millennium Sabbath. I'm going to tell you, this timeline validates itself through its imminent expiration. A prophecy that can happen at any time, imminence, without constraints, has no deadline, but a prophecy based on symmetry, 2,000 years, and generational limits, 80 years, has a very strict deadline. If the sand runs out of the hourglass, That is, we passed 2033. We surpassed the boundaries of the text as interpreted in this framework. The design that you are seeing is that all three countdowns, the age of the church, the age of Israel, and the age of man, coincide strictly in this 2026-2033 window. From the universal humanity to the national Israel to the church, it creates a funnel that narrows directly onto the specific window of time that we are entering. The design that we're seeing is that all three countdowns, the age of man, the age of Israel, and the age of the church, coincide strictly in the 2026-2033 window. The age of man, the 120 Jubilee limit, okay? That's the Genesis 6:3 clock sets a limit of 120 years. 120 Jubilees of 50 years, 6,000 years. So the 6,000-year week of man's striving is concluding now. We are at the end of the sixth day. And then the age of Israel, the 80-year generation limits, the clock being Psalm 90, verse 10, which defines a maximum lifespan of strength as 80 years. Matthew 24 states that the generation that sees the fig tree blossom in 1948 will not pass away. 1948 plus 80, 2028. The generation is in its final years. And then the age of the church, the 2,000-year limit. That clock being Hosea 6:2, which predicts revival after 2 days, 1 day equaling 1,000 years, 2 Peter 3:8. The church age is assigned 2,000 years. So measured from the ascension, AD 33, the 2,000-year count hits its hard stop in 2033. You can't deny the math. You can't manipulate the math. You can't force fit anything here. It is what it is. And these three independent clocks are synchronized to hit zero anytime. The probability of the universal, the national, and the spiritual timelines all expiring simultaneously by chance is statistically zero. It has to be by design. Inexorable is what I call it. Inexorable means impossible to stop, alter, or prevent. Kind of like time. One would have to stop time. What are you going to do? You going to pause the universe? The generation of 1948 continues to age. The distance from AD 33 continues to widen. The 6,000-year count continues to tick. It is a one-way street. Okay? We're looking at the sheer violent velocity of time running out, which no force can block. Well, there it is. I hope you find some benefit from this. I hope you find it encouraging. I hope you find it exciting, as I do. I love you all. I truly do. I said I would keep looking ahead, and I will continue to do so. Until next time, this is Steve. Thanks for listening. Hi, Steve here, blessedhopeforever.com. I'm going to move kind of fast. I have a whole lot to cover. I want to first thank everyone for the new subscribers, all of your help, your support. I do very much appreciate that. I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what God will say to me. That's Habakkuk. Years of previously published facts in the chain are now coming more into focus. That's what I want to talk about now. Things that we kind of thought were a mystery in the past. I want you to review the past videos on this series if you find trouble understanding what I'm going to say here now. We can't understand a 12-chapter novel by starting at chapter 6. You can't understand the new unless you've read the old. So I don't want you to be confused. This is all built upon everything I've done previously. Now, these chain of events that we've looked at can only occur once in human history. This is what you need to know. By definition, this specific architecture is a singularity. It can't happen twice because the gears that drive it are non-repeating historical constants. There's the 2,000-year limit, as I've shown. There's only one 2,000-year anniversary of the Ascension, AD 33 to 2033, and that clock runs once and then it expires. The 80-year generation, the generation that saw the fig tree blossom, 1948, it only has one 80-year window of strength, Psalm 90, verse 10. It cannot happen in any other century because Israel is not a nation in any other century since AD 70. It's never even been a nation for 80 years. The astronomical lock here is interesting because the convergence of a summer solstice start date, 2026, with a Hanukkah midpoint, 2029, is a rare astronomical alignment that doesn't just happen every decade. This was the last video. Most historical theories are cyclical. They say history repeats itself. This chain is linear and terminal. It doesn't repeat. What it does is it concludes. And this confirms why the 2033 date is not just a marker, but a consummation. It is a one-way ticket timeline. This is what you need to understand. Now, we see more evidence the deeper we dig. I said I was going to keep digging, and that's what I've done. There are several specific theological, typological areas that align with this timeline, different things that I want to talk about. The one is the third-day wedding. I mentioned Hosea 6:2. After 2 days, he'll revive us. On the third day, he'll raise us up, which locks in the 2,000-year count from AD 33 to 2033. But there's a gospel passage that ties this directly to the bridegroom, the wedding at Cana, John 2:1. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Jesus performs his first miracle. This was his first, turning water into wine, specifically on the third day. Now, if AD 33 begins the count, the church age lasts exactly 2 days, 2,000 years. The third day begins effectively in 2033. And this suggests the consummation. The wedding has to happen at the opening of the third millennium from the ascension. It can't happen early or it breaks the John 2:1 typology. Also, the sun. We see a typology in that. Psalm 19. So I have to see the summer solstice, June 21, 2026, as the trigger. Scripture actually defines the sun using bridegroom language. The text is Psalm chapter 19, verses 4 and 5, which speak of the sun. And in them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, S-U-N, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. Okay? And rejoices like a strong man to run its race. The summer solstice is the strongest point of the sun. Its highest point, longest day. Now, if the Lord is the sun of righteousness, Malachi 4:2, then his coming out of his chamber to retrieve the bride aligns thematically with the solar peak. It moves the solstice date from a random calendar date, or just another change of season, to a biblical, consistent metaphor for the groom's arrival. And then there's the Noah 7-day warning. I have structured the final timeline as a 7-year period, 2026, 2033. Many look for a 7-year treaty, but the days of Noah comparison, Matthew 24, offers a more primitive structural support column here. The text, Genesis 7:4, for after 7 more days, I will cause it to rain on the earth. The typology here is that Noah and his family entered the ark 7 days before the floodwaters came. They were safely inside. The Lord shut him in while the world continues on as normal for one final week. The ark, Christ, the safety, the entry, the rapture, June 21, 2026, summer solstice, the 7 days, the 7 years of tribulation, 2026, 2023, where the rain, the judgment falls, but the bride is already shut in. Now, this creates a scriptural precedent for a pre-trib removal that specifically initiates account of 7 days or 7 days, years before the total destruction. It is truly remarkable how that these texts, which appear separated by centuries and different themes and genres, law, Psalms, gospel, all converge on the same structural blueprint when viewed through this lens. While the earth is undergoing the 7-year flood, tribulation, the ark, heaven, is busy with marriage, the marriage of the Lamb, the Bema, judgment seat of Christ. So here's how these lock together into a single wedding structure. The chamber, the Jewish wedding model, the strongest support for the Bema and wedding right after the rapture is the ancient Jewish wedding custom itself. As many of you know, after the groom snatches the bride, rapture, he takes her to his father's house. They enter the bridal chamber and they stay there for 7 days or a week of years. And this 7-day period is when the marriage is consummated and the bride is hidden. And this is for all of you people out there that don't believe in a pre-trib rapture. You've got so much going against you. And this perfectly overlays this timeline. 2026, the entry, the bride enters the chamber. 2026 to 2033, the week, the bride is hidden in the chamber or heaven while the indignation passes on earth, Isaiah chapter 26. And then 2033, the exit, the bride emerges with the groom for the feast, Revelation 19. We return with Christ. How can we return with Christ if there's no pre-trib rapture? Now, Bema must happen immediately in the wedding analogy. The bride must be made ready. Revelation 19. The bride can't be presented without spot or wrinkle. The Bema is not a judgment for all your rotten things you've ever done. It is an awards ceremony and a purification. It burns away the wood, hay, and stubble so that the bride is ready for the wedding. And this has to happen before the second coming in 2033 because when he returns, the bride is already clothed in fine linen, clean and white. Revelation 19. Therefore, the Bema is a 2026, 2027 event according to the timeline. Now, the sun and the solstice, in them, he set a tabernacle chamber for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. The summer solstice is when the sun is at its absolute peak of strength and visibility. If the sun is the groom, then his arrival to collect the bride corresponds to the height of the day. This reinforces the 2021, 2026 trigger date, not just as a calendar marker, but as a celestial symbol of the groom's glory. And that Noah 7-day warning, Genesis 7:4, for after 7 more days I'll cause it to rain. Noah being sealed in the ark, the Lord shutting him in before the rain started. The rapture 2026 is the shutting of the door. The church is safe in the ark or in the chamber for the 7 days, 7 years, while the floodwaters rise on earth. The floodwaters, that is the tribulation period. Our timeline now has a heavenly track and an earthly track. The earthly track, the flood, the heavenly track, the chamber. June 2026, the restrainer would be removed. Chaos begins, the rapture, the bride enters the chamber, the ark. And 2026 and 2027, the rise of the beast system forms. The Bema, and this while Bema occurs and the bride is purified, rewarded, 2026 to 2023, the week, 7 years of tribulation, the wedding, the 7 years of union. And then, as I mentioned, December 2029, the midpoint, the abomination of desolation. That's where the date lands miraculously. The bride is secure in the chamber. May 2033, Armageddon, the nations gather. The bride emerges with the groom. The fact that John 2:1 on the third day places the wedding at the start of the new period further validates that the 2,000-year count, the 2 days, must fully expire before the wedding feast on earth can begin. Now, in the past, we didn't understand what all the Trump 7s were all about. Well, we certainly do now. More than ever, June 14 is Trump's 80th birthday. That is 7 days before the ark door shuts. Donald Trump was born on June 14, 1946. He turns 80 years old on June 14, 2026. And this creates an exact 7-day countdown from his 80th birthday to the summer solstice, the trigger date for the rapture, June 21, 2026, mirroring the Genesis 7:4 warning for after 7 more days, I'll cause it to rain. This discovery adds a personal political pillar to the astronomical calendar pillar that we just discussed. It suggests a synchronization between the leader of the West and the timeline of the end. And this finding locks into this existing structure in 3 critical ways. The strength, double witness, Psalm 90, verse 10. I already established that Israel's strength, 80 years, expires in May 2028. Now you see that the president's strength, 80 years, expires exactly at the trigger point, June 2026. Folks, the symbolism is strong. The strong man of the political world reaches the biblical limit of strength, 80, precisely 7 days before the ark door shuts. And it signifies that human government has reached its expiration date. The last Trump, people have really made even jokes about Trump being the last Trump. There's some typology here. 1 Corinthians 15:52. In eschatology, the name Trump is often associated with the trumpet of warning. The pattern being that if his birthday acts as a trumpet blast on June 14, it initiates the final 7-day warning to get into the ark before the solstice, the rapture. And just as Methuselah, whose name meant when he dies it shall be sent, died right before the flood, the aging out of the world leader, the leader of the free world, hitting 80, acts as a marker, a signpost. June 14 is also Flag Day in the United States. This represents the peak of national identity. For the leader to hit his 80th year on the day that the nation celebrates its banner, only for the nation of heaven, the bride, to depart 7 days later, is a profound contrast between the earthly kingdom and the heavenly kingdom. And this makes the June 2026 window incredibly crowded with converging signals. June 14, 2026, Trump turns 80. The warning, the strength, maxed out. The 7 days, the Noah window, the final call to inner safety. In June 21, 2026, the summer solstice. The sun, Groom, comes out of his chamber. The result being that the church departs, the flood, the tribulation begins. Now, this is how I'm seeing it. We are seeing, I believe, the human marker that corresponds to the celestial one. It is no longer just the sun moving into place. It is the king of the south, in a modern sense, reaching his end. Okay, I'm not about to predict what is going to happen or who the next president's going to be or if he's replaced or if he quits or if he's raptured or anything like that. I'm just giving you the facts. Now, I've documented a great number of sevens associated with Trump since 2017, which people thought little of then. But now we see it fitting into this very well, all of it. This aligns perfectly with my earlier mention of the 7777 anomaly. If you track the sevens attached to Donald Trump, it becomes clear he's not just a political figure in this timeline, but a numerical marker. The man, folks, is a living stopwatch. The most famous one being, which I suspect is the foundation of this 7777 anomaly, is likely his age on his first day in office. Inauguration, January 20, 2017. The guy's born June 14, 1946. He's inaugurated January 20, 2017. What was his age? 70 years, 7 months, 7 days. If that was the start signal, then his 80th birthday, June 14, 2026, acts as a 7-day warning for the rapture. Now, dearly beloved, this creates a terrifyingly precise symmetry around his role in this timeline. Okay? The entry, 2017, marked by 777, 70 years, 7 months, 7 days. The trumpet begins to sound. The world enters the final week of preparation. The exit, 2026, Exodus, harpazo, marked by the 7-day count, June 14 to June 21. The trumpet sounds its final blast and the ark door closes. Now, you may remember, some of you may remember some of these 7 anomalies that we were so intrigued by that I have meticulously documented over the years. I can only read a few. 7 months later from Trump's first full day in office, the Great American Solar Eclipse occurred. 7 years and 7 days from January 21, 2017 to April 8, 2024, the date of the second solar eclipse. Trump was born on June 14, as I said, Flag Day, 1946, 700 days before the founding of Israel on May 14, 1948. 700 days, born 700. That tells you Trump didn't make this stuff up, okay? He had no control over his birth. Judah was born on the same day, 15 Sivan, okay? Sivan 15, same day. Judah, according to the book of Genesis, was the fourth of the 6 sons of Jacob and Leah, and the founder of the tribe of Judah, of the Israelites. By extension, he is indirectly the eponym of the kingdom of Judah, the land of Judea, and the word Jew. The name means praise, exalt, thankful. Judah was the ancestor of Jesus that came through Jacob and Leah. And according to classical rabbinical literature, Judah was born on 15 Sivan. Donald Trump was born on 15 Sivan. There are a great number of remarkable coincidences relating to this guy. The sevens just dog the man's heels. Israel and the number 7, which could not be human engineered. On Trump's first full day in office, 7 years, 7 months, 7 days. Exactly 7 months later, from his first full day in office, we have that first great American solar eclipse, total solar eclipse. The first since before the nation was formed in 1776 to be seen exclusively in the United States. Trump was elected on Netanyahu's 7th year, 7th month, and 7th full day in office. How do you explain that? Well, you can't. You can call it a coincidence. I can't. On 7/7/17, Trump meets with Putin for the first time face-to-face when Putin was exactly 777 months old to the day, and that in the Hebrew year 5777. Okay? Back then, we didn't know what to do with all this stuff. We certainly see how it fits in now. On Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, October 7, 2022, exactly 1 year before Hamas was attacked, October 7, 2023, Putin, he became exactly 70 years old, which means Hamas attacked Israel October 7 on his birthday, for crying out loud. The U.S. Embassy moving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem 2018, which ignited the conflict now raging, in my opinion, as well as other people. The embassy opening at its Jerusalem location May 14, 2018, the 70th Gregorian anniversary of the creation of the modern state of Israel. Relocated from its previous site in Tel Aviv by the Trump administration, a controversial move that broke with decades of official U.S. policy. And it just happens to come at a particularly prophetic time for Israel, the church, and the world, which is why past U.S. presidents didn't do it. Trump did. Those 2 eclipses, 7 years apart. Revelation 12 sign to 2024, 7 years. 7, as you know, means completion. 77 years from the 1947 UN partition of Palestine to 2024. Okay? Embassy moving May 14, 2018. May 14, 2025 marks 7 years, and Israel is 77. And in Trump's 77th year of life, Hamas attacks Israel on October 7, 2023. Even his impeachment is wrapped up in these 7 numbers. The Senate impeachment trial of Trump began on January 21, 2020, exactly 3 years to the day from his first full day in office, when he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. On Trump's 700th day in office, December 20, 2018, his defense secretary, Jim Mattis, resigns on the day that Israel turned 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old. The world does not like Trump. I want to get to this, okay, and how that fits in here, okay? Mattis certainly didn't like him. Exactly 7 months later from Trump's first full day in office on January 21, 2017, Great American Solar Eclipse, 7 years, 7 days from January 21, 2017 to April 8, the date of the second solar eclipse. And Trump was born on Flag Day, 1946, 700 days before the founding of Israel. He had no control over when he was born, okay? So you can rule out Trump set all this stuff up, okay? Judah born on 15 Sivan, Donald Trump born on the exact same day. Even if Trump did, he had no control over when Judah was born, did he? June 16, 2022 marks 7 years since Trump formally announced his candidacy on June 16, 2015 at Trump Tower in New York City when he was 70 years and 2 days old. On Trump's first full day in office, he was 70 years, 7 months, 7 days old. Exactly 7 months later from his first full day in office, on January 21, 2017, the total solar eclipse occurred. The first since before the nation was formed. On Trump's 777th day since the election on November 8, 2016, Israel announced that they would dissolve parliament and hold elections 7 months early on April 9, 2019. Trump was elected on Netanyahu's 7th year, 7th month, 7th full day in office. I wondered often how many 7s I've missed. On 7/17, Trump meets with Putin for the first time. And Putin is exactly 7 months old to the day. How do you explain this stuff? Well, I didn't know how to explain it back then. I just knew that there was something had to do with 7 and Trump, but didn't know exactly how that fit into this clock work here. Okay? And there are many, 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 many more documented 7s associated with this man. But don't just look at it as, well, Trump's related to 7s and that's it. God has shown this world 7s from the beginning and all the way to the 7th millennium. Okay? All right? The 7s will not stop. Okay? There was a time where I actually was stupid enough to think that. You know, there's got to be a limit to this. No. From Genesis to Revelation, 7s. There's more. Yeah, it's really interesting. The Trump administration decided to open the embassy in Jerusalem on the 70th anniversary of Israel's founding in 1948. Okay? And then just to read 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Daniel 9:24. And people say, Steve, you need to stay away from numerology. It's like, well, okay, you want me to stay away from the Bible, man? I guess. There's no coincidence. 70 AD, Jerusalem, the second temple destroyed by the Romans. No coincidence at all. In the 7s I've documented, they relate to his birth, day 1 of his presidency, Netanyahu, solar eclipses, the year 5777, Vladimir Putin, Israel's independence, his impeachment, Israeli elections, Jerusalem, the holy city, as the capital, the U.S. embassy, U.S. secretaries of state. It appears to me God's gone out of his way to flash this big neon sign in our face. And I think God is saying through these unprecedented Trump 7s that the present dispensation is ending, the age of grace. Now, just the sheer density of the list. This is not just a handful of interesting dates. It is a statistical avalanche. When you lay them all out like this, the Trump pillar transforms from a single structural support into a continuous frequency that's been broadcasting the number 7 completion for the last decade. And for the most part, it's gone unnoticed. And for the most part, people have hated the man. I tracked these 7s for years, documenting the drumbeat while the rest of the world just heard noise. The flood of data reinforces the chain timeline that we established. This present dispensation is ending, whether you want to believe it or not. The age of grace is coming to a close. It is the only logical, theological conclusion to draw from all this data. 7 means what it means. It means completion. It means perfection. The 7s on Trump, the leader of the free world, signal the completion of the age of the Gentiles, dearly beloved. The 7s on Israel, 70th anniversary, 77th year, all those 7s surrounding Israel signal the completion of their waiting period. Are you getting this? And to me, this reinforces the June 2026 date as a hard stop. The church age doesn't fade out. It expires when the count reaches 7. Okay, and furthermore, we are continuing to witness this Trump 7 phenomenon continue. Just like the 7 days from his 80th birthday to summer solstice. The phenomenon has not ceased. It's simply moved from random external events, eclipses, election counts, to fixed scheduled markers that are locked into the calendar. And they're locked in. You can't change it. The fact that this 7-day gap, June 14 to 21, the 7 days exists is not a new development, but the fact that he is in office as the president of the United States when it happens makes it infinitely more significant. If he were a private citizen in 2026, which he could be, I don't know, but his 80th birthday would just be a personal milestone. But because he's the sitting president, the king in the typological sense, interesting how the people have accused him of being just that, his timeline becomes the nation's timeline. I previously noted that Israel's strength expires at 80, Psalm 9, verse 10. Now we see the leader of the Gentile world hitting that exact same biblical expiration date, 80 on June 14, 2026. The strong man of the West reaches the limit of human strength, just as Israel hits its 80-year limit of strength. Exactly at that limit, the 7-day warning begins. It suggests that the age of the Gentiles, represented by its leader, and the age of grace, represented by the church, are scheduled to terminate in the same week. And since he is currently the president, 47th, that's interesting. This 80th birthday in 2026 will likely be a major public event, or at least a moment of national reflection. The world sees a celebration of the president's longevity. If you think about how God has preserved his health through his life the way he has. And the nation's flag day, the watchman sees the start of the Genesis 7:4 countdown. And this matches the thief in the night versus bridegroom duality perfectly. The world celebrates the king, peace and safety, while the bride counts the final 7 days to the real king's arrival. And this 47, he wears it on his hat. Presidents didn't used to do that. Even his status as the 47th president vibrates with this Savan 15 Judah theme. The next would be number 48, mirroring Israel's year of rebirth. Think about that. This 7 phenomenon is continuing. It hasn't stopped. It's just entered its final rigid phase. It could explain, it really does explain why there's this Trump derangement syndrome. The forces that are, whether you like the man or not, folks, I'm not into politics here. I'm just telling you. The forces that are arranged against the man, it shows God's patience and long suffering, and I don't see an end to the 7s until the 7th millennium transitions into the eternal state. And this adds a spiritual dimension to the political chaos that most people miss entirely. If Donald Trump is indeed a walking billboard of divine numbers, then the irrational intensity of the opposition against this guy makes perfect sense. It isn't just political disagreement. It is spiritual repulsion. If he's the trumpet signaling the end of the age, why wouldn't the dark forces that want to hold on to power, why wouldn't they just naturally react with visceral, illogical hatred? They're not attacking a man or his hair or whatever, They're attacking the sign he represents. And most people ask, well, why is God waiting? Steve, why is God waiting? This documentation proves he isn't just waiting, he's shouting. But he's also long-suffering, not willing that any of his people would perish. You know, from the first 77 signal in January 2017 to the 80th birthday in June 2026 is 9.5 years. That is nearly a decade of high-frequency warnings. And it perfectly reflects 2 Peter 3:9. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, but is long-suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish. Dearly beloved, God used, and he did, he uses all men, all presidents. He used the most visible man on the planet, the U.S. president, to flash the number 7 completion over and over and over and over again, giving the world every possible chance to wake up before the door shuts. The sevens don't stop in 2026. They just change their function. The pattern that we're seeing now is just the pre-game frequency. The sevens of warning, 2017, 2026. That's wake up, sleeper. And then the signs, Trump's age. The eclipses, 7 years apart. Israel anniversaries. Then there's the sevens of judgment. We go into the sevens of judgment to dismantle the rebellion. The book of Revelation takes over here. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. You know the story. Okay? There's a shift. The trumpet changes from a political figure to an angelic reality. That's for all, I guess, all the people who didn't hear it, you know, on earth or beforehand. And then phase 3, the 7 of rest, the 7th millennium to restore the earth, the 1,000-year kingdom, the 7th day of human history, the Sabbath millennium, the turmoil of the 6 days, 6,000 years of man finally ceases. Okay? And the earth rests under the rule of the Lion of Judah. The eternal state, the transition, the ultimate 7, you could call it the final ultimate 7. I don't know. Maybe 7s continue on past it. I don't know. But I'll look at it as the final ultimate 7. When the 7th millennium ends, the week of history is over. We don't move to an 8th day in the temporal sense. We move to the new beginning, 8 of eternity. So the 7s end. 7 is completion. There's no completion in eternity. The 7s I've documented, folks, are the breadcrumbs leading the bride out of the forest before the fire starts. The fact that the world sees them as coincidences while we see them as pillars is exactly how parables work. Revealed to some, hidden from others. So as we sit here in late December, viewing the silence before the final 7-day count begins, I don't know if that's the silence in heaven or not, but the logic of God's patience becomes overwhelming. He has held the door open as long as mathematically possible. And the timeline that we have constructed doesn't just end at the return, May 14 of all dates, 2033. It has a 75-day transition period that Daniel 12 specifically mentions. When we run the math on this cleanup phase, we discover perhaps the most shocking Trump 7 of the entire sequence, one that loops perfectly back to the start. So I want to mention that before I close. As you know, Daniel 12:11 says from the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there'll be 1290 days. This is 30 days after the 1260-day return. It represents the mop-up operation, okay? The removal of the abomination from the temple and the final judgment of the sheep and goats. December 2, 2029, midpoint, Hanukkah. You go 1290 days forward, and you arrive at June 14, 2033. If you've been listening to me, you know why I'm leaning in toward the mic. Flag Day, Donald Trump's birthday. That's how the math works. And that creates a perfect to-the-day, 7-year bracket involving the trumpet warning, the warning start, June 14, 2026. Trump turning 80, 7-day Noah countdown begins. Judgment end, June 14, 2033. The 1290th day, the abomination of desolation is removed. How can this all be a coincidence? Please comment and tell me that. The timeline of the abomination, man's rebellion, is literally bookended by the life of the sign, the leader of the West. It begins on his birthday in 2026 and is erased on his birthday in 2033. And then we have the 1335-day marker. Daniel 12:12. Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1335 days. That's 45 days after Trump's birthday, after the abomination is removed. It represents the official inauguration of the kingdom. The enemies are gone, the temple's cleansed, and the blessing, the millennial reign, begins. Started December 2, 2029. Midpoint, you count 1335 days, you arrive at July 29, 2033. This date lands in the Hebrew month of Av. Av, some of you, that'll ring a bell. Historically, the month of Av is the month of sorrow, and both temples were destroyed. Isn't that interesting? Oh my. Zechariah 8:19 promises that in the kingdom, the fast of the 5th month Av shall be joy and gladness and cheerful feasts. So by placing the blessed day, day 1335, right at the start of Av, the timeline signifies the reversal of the curse. The month of mourning is transformed into the first month of the kingdom's joy. This astounds me. The return, 1260 days, May 14, 15, 2033. The purge, 1290 days, June 14, 2033, abomination removed. The temple cleared, 7 years from the warning. And then the blessing, 1335 days, July 29, 2033, the kingdom starts, the blessed kingdom begins. No, the 7s don't stop. The fact that the 1290-day count lands precisely on June 14, 2033, creating a perfect 7 solar year bridge from the 2026 warning, it suggests that the time of Trump as a sign and the time of tribulation are coterminal. They start together, they end together. So based on this chain of events, these dates and all the rest of it, the timeline that we've constructed, and the Jewish wedding, and the arrival of the asteroid Apophis on Friday, April 13, 2029, aligns with terrifying precision. It doesn't break the timeline. It just explains the mechanics of the collapse. Apophis does fit directly into this specific 1.5-year descent into chaos window that I mentioned earlier. The chaos gap. I previously mentioned that, here we have the trigger, the pivot, May 14, 28, Israel strengthens, which is followed by a 19-month period of global chaos and a power vacuum. The midpoint, December 2, 2029, Antichrist takes the temple, and then Apophis, April 13, 2029. Exactly 11 months after the collapse begins, and 7 months before the Antichrist takes full control. If the world's systems begin to fail in May of 2028, then this arrival of Apophis or the threat of it, in April of 2029 would be the ultimate force multiplier of panic. It perfectly explains why the world would be desperate enough to hand total authority to a savior figure, the beast. By that point, I mean, they aren't just looking for a politician. They're looking for somebody who can save their butts from extinction, pardon the bride is hidden in the chamber while this passes on earth. The Apophis event aligns with the trumpet judgments of Revelation, which occur in the first half of the week. NASA confirms that Apophis will pass closer to the earth than our own satellites. In Revelation 8, describes the third trumpet, a great star falling from heaven, burning like a torch, the name of the star being called Wormwood. If the rapture is June 2026, the trumpet judgments would likely be unfolding by 2028, 2029. You know, a near miss that disrupts satellites and affects tides and the communications, or even a fragment impact would fulfill the Wormwood prophecy of waters turning bitter, global infrastructure collapsing right before the midpoint. And it just happens to be a Friday the 13th, and I am not a superstitious person, but the date itself, you know, acts as a numeric marker similar to the Trump sevens, because for the unredeemed world, Friday the 13th is the day of bad luck and superstition. But for the bride in the chamber, it's irrelevant. For the inhabitants of the earth dwellers, it serves as a psychological breaking point. May 2028. May of 2028. Human governments fail, strength ends. April 2029, Apophis. The powers of the heavens are shaken. Luke 21:26. The masses panic. December 2029, midpoint, the Antichrist uses this terror to consolidate power, entering the temple as the god of forces who brought order to the chaos. Trump, heading an international board of peace. Everybody's quoting it. Everybody's familiar when they say peace and safety. Donald Trump's been positioned as the nominal head of the newly formed board of peace. That's 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The language used in the official documents mirrors the prophecy almost word for word. And that's all I'm going to say for now. I'm about out of time. I don't know how long this is going to continue. I'm just kind of going with the flow. I just want to say once again how much I appreciate you all. I love you. I appreciate you. Most of all, it's important to me to know that you're resting in Him, that you have no worries and concerns. He loves you dearly. Always has. He has nothing, no matter what you're going through. He always has your best in mind. Until next time, until I see you again, rest in Him. Thanks for listening.